Josh Thompson believes Khamzat Chimaev has the potential to become the UFC's first ever three-division champion, and he even floated the idea of a future Jon Jones versus Chimaev superfight. According to Thompson, when you look across multiple weight classes, there are very few fighters who can realistically pose a serious threat to Chimaev's style and dominance. One of the biggest obstacles people previously mentioned was Magomed Ankalaev at light heavyweight. But with Ankalaev no longer holding the title, that stylistic roadblock is gone. Chimaev is expected to face Nassourdine Imavov sometime in the spring, a matchup that makes sense on paper. However, the situation is far from finalized. There is a high-stakes fight scheduled for late February between Sean Strickland and Anthony Fluffy Hernandez, and a strong performance by either fighter could significantly reshape the title picture. While Imavov is a dangerous striker, he is not particularly known for having the wrestling or grappling necessary to survive 5 rounds against someone like Chimaev. Hernandez, on the other hand, presents a much more intriguing challenge. He has already proven his ability to grapple at a high level, scramble effectively, and remain dangerous on the ground, which makes him a riskier matchup for a dominant wrestler like Chimaev. Thompson admitted he was once cautious about fully buying into the hype surrounding Chimaev, largely due to concerns over his cardio, previous health issues, and long-term endurance. However, after Chimaev's recent dominant performances, Thompson believes those concerns are starting to fade. If Chimaev continues to demonstrate consistent cardio and control, Thompson sees no wrestler at 205 pounds who could realistically beat him. Looking ahead to heavyweight, Thompson believes the path could be even clearer. While Curtis Blaydes is a strong wrestler, Chimaev may never have to face him if he moves up as a reigning champion. For these reasons, Thompson truly believes Chimaev has a legitimate chance to make history as the UFC's first three-division champion. Kamaru Usman has sided with flyweight contender Manel Kape in believing that Alexander Pantoja's gruesome injury was the result of his own technical mistake rather than a pure freak accident. The flyweight division continues to move at a rapid pace, and just over a month after Pantoja lost his UFC title in shocking fashion at UFC 323, the former champion is already back in the gym. Pantoja suffered an elbow injury just 26 seconds into his fight against Joshua Van after posting his arm to brace a fall. While the injury looked severe, reports indicate no surgery is required, with tendons affected but ligaments remaining intact. Pantoja has shared footage of himself doing light conditioning and selective sparring as he pushes through recovery, targeting a mid to late 2026 return with hopes of reclaiming the title. However, not everyone views the injury as unavoidable. Manel Kape was quick to label it a technical error, explaining that in jiu-jitsu, fighters are taught to roll when falling rather than extend an arm to post. Extending the arm in that situation, according to Kape, invites injury and ultimately cost Pantoja both the fight and the belt. Usman echoed that assessment, agreeing that while the moment happened in a split second, it was still a mistake that directly changed the outcome. He explained that Joshua Van lifted the kick, and in that scenario, a fighter is not supposed to post the arm. Instead, rolling through the fall is the correct response. Usman acknowledged that whether it is called a freak accident or not, that single error ended Pantoja's title reign. At the same time, Usman expressed empathy for Pantoja's desire to return quickly. He noted that being champion had become a central part of Pantoja's identity, built through constant title defenses. Usman also highlighted how brutally fast the sport moves on, pointing out that fans and media quickly shifted focus to names like Manel Kape, Joshua Van, and Tatsuro Taira, with little discussion about how suddenly Pantoja lost his title. Ilia Topuria has ignited a major controversy after unleashing an emotional and highly charged rant aimed at Brian Ortega, revealing a previously unknown in-person confrontation between the two. For years, fans believed there was mutual respect between Topuria and Ortega, given their shared Spanish-speaking background and cultural ties, with no visible public tension. That perception changed abruptly after Topuria delivered one of his most aggressive interviews to date. Topuria accused Ortega of being disrespectful and unprofessional, reacting strongly to past remarks in which Ortega claimed he did not know who Topuria was during his rise in the featherweight rankings. According to Topuria, The two later crossed paths in person, where he directly confronted Ortega over those comments. The situation is particularly notable because the matchup between them was once expected to happen when Topuria was still competing at featherweight, with negotiations reportedly close before the fight ultimately fell apart. The reaction in Spain has been explosive, with fans stunned not only by the feud itself, but by how far Topuria went in his criticism. Topuria openly mocked Ortega, accusing him of pretending ignorance to avoid a dangerous fight. He claimed Ortega knew exactly who he was and was using dismissiveness as a shield. Topuria said he challenged Ortega directly, urging him to either admit fear or acknowledge the fight as a serious risk rather than pretending unfamiliarity. Topuria went further, stating he was willing to fight Ortega anywhere, including in Mexico, regardless of hostile crowds. He claimed he would have signed a summer contract without hesitation and predicted a knockout victory, insisting he had already figured Ortega out stylistically, with no need for takedowns. Topuria emphasized that he has fought as the villain throughout his career in hostile territories and ultimately brought recognition and pride back to Spain. The comments surfaced during an interview that initially focused on unrelated MMA drama, making the outburst even more unexpected. With emotions clearly running high, Topuria's remarks have transformed what was once a quiet rivalry into one of the most heated potential feuds in the division. Reinier de Ridder is calling for an immediate rematch with Brendan Allen, firmly believing their first encounter was a fluke and insisting he would beat Allen on virtually any other night. The Dutch submission specialist suffered his first UFC loss in October 2025 at UFC Vancouver, when his corner stopped the fight before the fifth round after a sudden and severe energy crash left him barely able to move. De Ridder started the fight strongly, controlling the opening round with dominant grappling and repeatedly putting Allen in danger on the ground. He came close to finishing the fight late in the third round, locking in an inverted triangle as the buzzer sounded. However, exhaustion ultimately derailed what many expected to be another showcase of his elite jiu-jitsu, allowing Allen to survive and take control as the fight wore on. Now fully healthy and back in training, de Ridder has made it clear that unfinished business with Allen is his top priority. In a recent appearance on Submission Radio, he explained that the way the first round unfolded is how he believes the entire fight should have gone. Despite having almost no energy left in his body and struggling to even lift his arms or legs, de Ridder maintains he was still seconds away from finishing the fight in the third round. De Ridder stated that if he had just a few more seconds, the submission would have been secured, and he remains convinced that he beats Allen every time they fight, except for that one night. While a move up to light heavyweight has been discussed, he emphasized that he cannot move on until this loss is addressed. Despite efforts to let go and stay focused mentally, the defeat continues to weigh on him, and he insists he needs to settle the score before considering any change in divisions. As speculation continues around the historic UFC White House event, fighters across the roster are eager to secure a spot on what could become one of the most iconic cards in the promotion's history. Khamzat Chimaev has now officially thrown his name into the conversation, directly calling out Alex Pereira as his desired opponent for the event. Chimaev took to social media to issue the challenge, posting that he was ready for the White House stage and confidently promising a fast finish against Pereira. He followed up with another message directed at Brazilian fans, urging them to encourage Pereira to accept the fight if he is not afraid. The call-out immediately drew attention, as it adds a new layer of intrigue to an already crowded lineup of potential super fights. The timing of Chimaev's challenge is especially notable, given that just days earlier, Jon Jones also expressed interest in facing Pereira at the UFC White House. Jones, however, suggested that he did not believe the UFC would allow that matchup to happen. This has fueled speculation that the promotion may instead be considering Chimaev versus Pereira as the preferred option, potentially leaving Jones with a different path if he wants to secure a spot on the card. One possible scenario could see Jones push toward a long-discussed matchup with Tom Aspinall, while Chimaev and Pereira headline one of the marquee bouts of the event. While nothing has been confirmed, the situation highlights how competitive the race has become to be featured on the historic White House card. With multiple elite fighters staking their claims, fans are now left to debate the most intriguing question. If Alex Pereira and Khamzat Chimaev were to meet at the UFC White House, who would come out on top? The potential matchup has already sparked widespread discussion and could significantly shape the direction of several divisions moving forward. Arman Tsarukyan has made it clear who he will be rooting for when Justin Gaethje steps into the octagon at UFC 324. While Tsarukyan's title aspirations remain uncertain for 2026, the lightweight contender believes his path to a championship opportunity becomes much clearer if Gaethje emerges victorious at the event. Gaethje is set to face Paddy Pimblett in the main event of UFC 324, with the winner expected to capture an interim lightweight title ahead of the January 24th card. In a recent interview with Helen Yee, Tsarukyan explained why he wants Gaethje to win the fight. He stated that Gaethje would be willing to face him next, whereas Pimblett would likely attempt to avoid the matchup. Tsarukyan suggested that Pimblett is aware of the danger he presents and implied that Gaethje is more willing to take on the toughest challenges in the division. It remains to be seen whether these comments will prompt a response from Pimblett, but they have already added another layer of intrigue to the UFC 324 main event. Tsarukyan's own title chances will ultimately depend on the status of reigning champion Ilia Topuria, who is currently taking time away from competition due to a highly publicized divorce. When asked about his ideal timeline, Tsarukyan said he hopes to fight for the belt either in the summer or toward the end of the year. He explained that if Topuria is not ready to return by then, he believes he should be next in line for the title. But if the champion is available, Tsarukyan may be called upon to compete for an interim belt. Outside of the UFC, Tsarukyan has remained active by competing in grappling and wrestling events. Most recently, he took part in a Real American Freestyle card, where he reportedly dominated Lance Palmer. Following the event, Michael Chandler claimed he would easily defeat Tsarukyan in a wrestling match. Tsarukyan quickly fired back on social media, mocking the comment and earning praise from fans for his sharp response. Michael Bisping has made several bold predictions for the UFC landscape in 2026, offering his take on how each division could look by the end of the year. With the new season already underway, fighters and analysts alike have begun sharing their forecasts, and Bisping's picks have drawn significant attention. While visiting Tbilisi, Georgia, the former UFC middleweight champion revealed which fighters he believes will be holding gold by year's end. In the bantamweight division, Bisping predicts that Merab Dvalishvili will reclaim the title. He also foresees a major shift at flyweight, despite the presence of current champion Joshua Van and former title holder Alexandre Pantoja. Bisping believes Manel Kape will emerge as the flyweight champion by the end of 2026. Although Kape previously lost a decision to Pantoja in 2025, Bisping pointed to Kape's recent knockout performances and continued development as reasons for his confidence. He emphasized that fighters evolve over time and backed Kape to complete his rise to the top of the division. At lightweight, Bisping sees no change at the top. He stated that Ilia Topuria will remain champion through the end of 2026, expressing doubts that contenders like Paddy Pimblett or Justin Gaethje could dethrone him. While acknowledging Arman Tsarukyan as a dangerous dark horse, Bisping does not believe that matchup will materialize anytime soon. Bisping also expects stability at welterweight, predicting that Islam Makhachev will continue his reign despite the division's depth. He cited the presence of elite contenders such as Michael Morales and Kamaru Usman, but maintained that no one poses an immediate threat to Makhachev's dominance. At middleweight, Bisping predicts Khamzat Chimaev will remain king, and he made a similar call at light heavyweight, with Alex Pereira retaining the title, even while praising rising contender Carlos Ulberg. In the heavyweight division, Bisping believes Tom Aspinall will defeat Cyril Gane in a potential rematch, though he admitted his confidence has waned. He also added that if Gane were to face Pereira for an interim title, he would favor Gane to win.